Well, good hello. Mr. Phil here with Math Made Easy, and today we're going to talk about negative numbers. We're going to talk about what they are, how they exist and what they do, what purpose they serve, and then we're going to learn how to work with them. One very common thing that if you haven't seen them before, is that a great way to help students understand what negative numbers are and how they exist both sequentially and spatially with respect to positive numbers. A great visual learning aid for that is what I've drawn on the board behind me. You can see a couple of them. They're number lines. And you can see if you go to the left on the horizontal number lines, that's the negative side of 0. If you go to the right of 0, that's the positive side. Now, I know that we don't normally see vertical number lines drawn up and down too often, but I think that's also a really great tool to learn how to use while you're doing this. Just because when we go to graphing later, we know that the y-axis travels vertically up and down, and that it also behaves the same way. The positive values are on the top of 0, the negative values fall below 0. So if you can learn to do it both ways, I think that can only be a help. But I also will preface that by saying this idea, the number line specifically, this is something we're going to use just to help us understand how negative numbers work. This is not going to be something we really want to use when we're calculating with negative numbers. It doesn't matter what operation we're doing, just because this method, much like counting on your fingers when you're doing simple arithmetic with addition and subtraction, just happens to take longer for most people. So keep that in mind. Understand that what we're going to go over today are just the basics of negative numbers, how they work, and how we can use in something like a number line to help us understand exactly how negative numbers work. So let's go to the computer, let's do some problems together, let's talk about some ideas, and see if we can help you understand how negative numbers work better. So let's get to work. Okay, guys, so this is a number line. If you can take a quick look, technically these arrows mean that this line continues infinitely in this direction. On the positive side, this arrow means the number line continues infinitely in this direction. But here's a couple main things about the number line that we just want to understand. This line actually represents all of the possible numbers that exist in the universe. And that's why I said that these arrows mean that the line goes forever, because technically this line does not stop, because there is no limit to how high you can count with integers, either into the positive range or the negative range. But when we're talking about negative numbers, this is what I really want you to understand, is that numbers that we studied before are only on the right side of the graph. So from 0 and then to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, so on and so forth. And then in between here, we learned about decimals and fractions. It can be from 0 to 1. It can be in between 4 and 5. Doesn't matter. So that same rule kind of applies, and the same properties apply to the negative numbers as well. It's just instead of going to the right and increasing as we go right or further right on the number line, negative numbers increase as they go left on the number line. So you can see it starts with 1 here, 2, and sequentially gets bigger. One thing you need to understand, though, with negative numbers is that they actually decrease in value as they get bigger. So if you were to compare the value of -9 to -1, you would say that -1 is actually worth more, because -9 is more of a negative number. So here's an interesting way to look at it too. If you use 0 as your reference point, the further you go to the right away from 0, the numbers get bigger as they get bigger in the positive realm, and then the numbers in the negative realm get actually smaller as they go to the left. So a good rule of thumb is no matter where you start on the number line, let's say it's way over here in like -100, if we move right, we're instantly moving to numbers that are bigger or greater in value. I know that might be kind of hard to understand, but it's just a general point that you need to just take note of right now, because when we start doing calculations, you're not really going to think too much about that kind of number value. So I think a good way to illustrate how this number line can be useful is if we actually do some problems. So by now, I'm hoping that you know a simple arithmetic problem like this down here, 2 plus 3, or positive 2 plus 3. If we know the answer is 5, we need to be able to explain why it's 5 now that we have some extra knowledge. So here's how the number line works. You start on the first number here, 2, and you locate it on the number line. So 2, or positive 2, is here. So I'm going to put a dot here. That's where we start, okay? So if it says plus 3, plus or addition means we move to the right. So we're going to move to the right 3 spaces because that's our number here. It says we're going to add 3 to 2. So I use these little humps to measure. There's 1, there's 2, and there's 3 units. So we ended on 5. And that's how addition works. And that's how you can illustrate it using a number line. The same thing works if we have negative numbers. So we're going to start at -1. I'm going to put my dot. And it says now we're subtracting 2. So an important thing to understand is for addition, we move to the right, correct? We move this way. For subtraction, guess which way we move? It's the opposite direction. We move to the left. So if we start at -1, where I put a dot, and we're subtracting 2 units, so we got to put 2 humps. There's 1 unit, there's 2 units. We ended up here on -3, so -3 is the answer. I want you to pay close attention to the type of answers we're getting, though, so that you can get a sense of how these arithmetic calculations with negative numbers is going to get a little bit easier and a little bit quicker later. Okay, so now let's go to a couple different problems so we can see just exactly how I'm erasing all these things that I drew. Sorry, I'll rewrite the answers in, but just to make it clear. Okay, here we go. So now we're going to do the same exercise again, but we're going to see a little bit different result in our answers. So here I'm starting at +2, so here's +2. I'm going to put my dot, but this time we're subtracting 3 instead of adding 3. So we are going to move to the left. And we're going to subtract 3 units. So we need to move 3 units to the left. There's 1, there's 2, and there's 3. And we ended up on -1. So that's our answer, -1. Using the same logic that we used over here for these problems, so it shouldn't be too confusing. I also want to show you how you can end up on the positive side if we start with a negative number. So same deal, we're starting at -1 this time. There's -1. And then we're adding 2, which means we're going to go to the right 2 units. So here's 1, and there's 2 units. So the answer for this is +1 because we ended on +1. So I'll go ahead and rewrite all these answers in so that you can see. What I would say is get in the habit of drawing this number line and start using it in this way just so you can visualize what's happening when we do simple addition and simple subtraction of fractions. All right, so now if you notice in this screen, we've got a vertical number line, which, as I explained in the intro, is no different from a horizontal number line. It's just visually different. They work in the exact same way. So let's jump right back into these problems and say to ourselves, well, we have got a couple problems here, so let's go through and do them. +1 + 5. So we start at +1 here, and we go 5 units up. So if we're doing it vertical, plus is up. The positive number is on the top side. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4. We got to go 1 more unit. We end here on +6, so our answer is +6. Let's use a different color for the next problem. How about like a lighter blue? So -3 - 3, actually. Why does this always do that? Okay, there we go. So -3 - 3. So we're starting at -3 here. And we're going to go down 3 because negative or subtracting on a vertical line is down. So we go down 3 units, we end up at -6. That is the answer, -6. So hopefully you're getting the hang of this. I'm going to give you a couple seconds just to do the last few problems on your own. These ones are a little bit tougher, but I'm going to give you about 5 seconds and I'll go through and walk through them and we'll go through them together. Okay, so -3 + 4. We got to start here at -3. So I'm going to put a little dot here above. And we're going to go up 4 because it's +4. So we got to go up 1, 2, 3, 4 units, and the answer is positive 1. How about we'll pick a different color like green or something here. So plus 1 minus 5. So we're going to start here at plus 1. Minus 5 means we got to go down 5 units. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, and then one more, and we end up here at negative 4. So those are the answers for these problems. It's very straightforward, folks. You can see how this can be very beneficial to understanding it the first time. That's the reason why I chose all these different colors too, so that you could really visualize what's happening. But I want you to pay more attention now to the patterns and how the numbers are, or the answers are ending up with the types of numbers we have. Because I'm going to go over a system in the next negative numbers video where we're actually going to work with calculations and see how we can do this a little bit more quickly, because you can see probably in the last 4 or 5 minutes, all we were able to do was 4 problems. And this, drawing out the number line, doing all the hashes, labeling the hashes with numbers, this is all very time consuming. So you can see how in a pinch, or if we're taking a test or a quiz where we want to be quick and accurate at the same time, it might be a little bit difficult to be quick. So what I would advise you to do is don't just stop here, write your own number lines, have someone come up with like 10 problems just so you can exercise it and see if you can little by little get down to the answer without having to write as much on the number line. Like maybe you start doing out these humps like I did, or whatever system you use, and then maybe you can visualize them when you do them and just kind of use your eyes to track the number hashes, or whatever you do to find a way to get this faster. I think that's always a good thing, like I always mention. So go ahead, do some of these problems, take some of this advice that I gave you and the tips that I gave you, put them into practice, see what they can do for you. And stay tuned for the next video, which we're going to go much more in depth into calculations with negative numbers. So I will talk to you soon. This is Mr. Phil signing off. Bye.